Hey, 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 hey. Who would have ever thought that Ukraine, besides Russia with its crazed piglets, Lukashenko, and the leader Kim Jong-un, would actually end up facing a very real and dangerous enemy in the West? And we're not even talking about a country, but about a bunch of lame ducks. We mean the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban and his government. Although, to be more accurate, the current Prime Minister of Hungary, because according to the polls, the chances in the upcoming elections, his party has none.
Yes, his support is gradually declining because Hungary, as a country of the European Union that the EU continues to invest in, is developing. The number of politically enlightened and educated people is growing, just as it is on average across Europe. And that is why, naturally, Orban is losing more and more of his own voters.
Indeed. According to many recent public opinion polls, they are currently trailing the main opposition party by 10 to 12 points.
Orban has completely failed in domestic policy. The economy is a total fiasco. GDP growth is 0.4%. In fact, this is stagnation. For example, in Ukraine, which has been at war for 11 years, growth last year was 2%.
He consistently blames someone else for every single problem. Kyiv is to blame, Brussels is to blame. And in general, everyone is always supposedly wishing something bad. For Hungary, it is only Viktor Orban who can save the entire nation.
Hungary's budget deficit is 5% of GDP, and the national debt is one of the highest in the region, 75% of GDP. And this is against the backdrop of the highest inflation in the EU. Prices for food and utilities are skyrocketing. These sky-high economic achievements have already been dubbed Orbanomics.
People are so incredibly tense right now, and so eager for change that neither lies nor manipulation will be able to help them anymore at all. The discontent is truly enormous.
Instead of somehow steering out of the crisis, Orban and his wonderful team are only making things worse with their decisions. Because of the upcoming elections, Putin's Hungarian friend sharply increased social spending. Simply put, it's like handing out buckwheat to voters. An absolutely populist and economically disastrous move. The budget deficit has grown even larger.
Brutal.
In the past, Budapest could always count on help from the EU in difficult situations. But Orban's anti-European policy has deprived Hungary of this lifeline. Because of rampant corruption and the refusal to reform the judicial system, due to pressure on independent media and civil society organizations, as well as the persecution of LGBT people, Europe froze funding for Budapest. Thanks to Orban's reckless policies, Hungarians missed out on about $26 billion. Before this, since the 2010s, Hungary's economy had grown significantly, precisely thanks to European Union funds. But now Orban has forgotten about this and called the EU an empire that wants to enslave the Hungarians.
He noted that Europe has plunged headlong into the Ukrainian conflict. But Hungary refused to do this, advocating for peace and comparing the leadership of the European Union to the Austrian Habsburg Empire, against which Hungary fought in the mid-19th century. Orban emphasized that today's empire does not want to help Ukraine, it wants to colonize it. The instrument of colonization is war. The rulers of Europe decided that Ukraine must continue the war at all costs.
That is, with one hand he took money from the evil European occupiers, and with the other he showed them the fig for the votes of far-right voters. Comfortable. But Brussels wasn't very happy about this. The money tap was turned off and investments decreased sharply. It's clear now why Orban is desperately clinging to his last financial cushion, cheap Russian oil. Thanks to it, he has for rents for campaign leaflets and billboards, and we'll get to those separately in a moment. Against the backdrop of a total failure in the economy and on the international stage, winning the April elections would take nothing short of a miracle. And as with all autocrats, this miracle is called an external enemy, in the face of which the nation must rally around its leader.
Regarding Ukraine, yes, in the context of elections, I should note that it is precisely autocratic regimes that use this approach. It's just like in Russia, for example, there is an external enemy. This is a tactic that is consistently employed. There must always be an external enemy because in order to provide a convenient justification for these failures in economic policy and other areas, specifically domestic policy, you need to identify and point to an external enemy. It's always very convenient, and in principle, it always works.
It is Ukraine that Orban has chosen to play the role of the external enemy. It's very convenient. Kyiv is engaged in a very difficult war and is in many ways dependent on neighboring Hungary. Plus, Orban can always play up territorial claims and the oppression of Hungarian-speaking residents who are being terribly persecuted by the Petlerites.
We can clearly see how frequently and aggressively Orban uses Ukrainophobic rhetoric throughout the entirety of the election campaign period. In essence, Ukraine is being systematically made out to be the primary existential threat, and accordingly, obviously this doesn't follow any logical path other than internal domestic political considerations, specifically the calculated logic of modern election campaigns. At the same time, the main complaints against Orban from his own citizens are not related to foreign policy.
Orban has built his entire election campaign on an open war with Ukraine and personally with Zelensky. He frightens Hungarians with the terrifying Ukrainian mafia and even more terrifying Ukrainian workers, who, like hordes of Huns, will come and take all the jobs from Hungarians. And they will also bring epidemics and devastation. That's it.
Why does everyone you love somehow end up dying?
Orban constantly blocks European support for Ukraine and sanctions against Russia. The president of Ukraine, Zelensky, couldn't take it anymore and even made a sharp joke about it.
We hope that one individual in the European Union won't block the 90 billion euro aid package. The first tranche of 90 billion, and the brave Ukrainian soldiers will have the weapons they need. Otherwise, we'll give this person's address to our armed forces, to our guys. Let them call him and communicate in their own language.
Orban saw in this his great chance for salvation and decided to play the tragic role of a victim. Somewhere deep inside, he dug out the actor within himself and shot an incredible movie called Saving Private Orban. A video was posted online showing Orban calling all his relatives and telling them that the Ukrainians want to destroy them.
Hello, my dear Rosa. Where are you now? Hello, dear Shara. It's me, your own father. Listen, soon you'll see in the news that Ukraine is threatening not just me, but all of you as well. Both the child and your mother. That's why I'm writing this, so you won't be frightened by surprise. If anything happens or you see something suspicious, tell me right away. I honestly feel that we need to take this matter very seriously.
Why did they even let him out of the hospital?
Of course, it's not Oscar-worthy, but he did earn himself a ring of Krakowska sausage. Can you imagine the level of this person's desperation? Orban has decided to play the Ukraine card to the fullest. All of Hungary is now plastered with pre-election posters of Zelensky. He's like the boogeyman for Hungarian pensioners and conspiracy theorists. Like in the old song, vote for Orban or Zelensky will attack.
If you decide to vote for Poroshenko, then Vladimir Putin will surely attack Ukraine.
Unfortunately, this actually works on a certain part of Hungarian society, especially the appeals to historical justice. Ukraine oppresses Hungarians, and in general, Transcarpathia needs to be returned to its native harbor.
This is a very telling and significant fact. Even before the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in the month of February in 2022, Orban was one of the very few European leaders who officially visited Putin in Moscow at that time. And then later on, a significant amount of information began to emerge, suggesting that Russia had allegedly planned to work out this complex issue during its aggression against Ukraine. The potential division, so to speak, of the Ukrainian territory with neighboring states. Relevant talking points were floated to the governments of many different countries, but supposedly only Viktor Orban took it seriously.
But this thing can work both ways. If we're talking about oppression and ethnogenocide, then it's Budapest that raises some questions. Hundreds of thousands of ethnic Ukrainians live on the territory of modern Hungary, and they have been living there in compact communities since the 17th century. But for some reason, according to all the latest official censuses, they don't exist there. How is that possible? After all, Ukraine is Hungary's largest neighbor. There are Ukrainians in Slovakia, Poland, Romania, and Moldova. But in Orban's homeland, they are mysteriously absent. Why?
I do not really know.
What's interesting is that there are no Ukrainians, but there are 300,000 Greek Catholics living in Hungary. But who are they? Who in this region was a Greek Catholic? That's right, exclusively Ukrainians. Let's just say this is our historical peculiarity. The northeast of Hungary is ethnically Ukrainian land. There are twice as many of them living there as there are Hungarians in Zakarpattia. But Budapest remains shamefully silent about them. All because, starting from the 18th century, the Kingdom of Hungary pursued a harsh policy of assimilation. First, they banned church services in Ukrainian. Then, they closed all Ukrainian schools. And in the 19th century, Magyarization reached its peak. If you want to be a fully fledged member of society, you have to completely give up your roots.
The authorities began to encourage Magyarization by various means. That's when the term Magyaron appeared. This word was used to refer to Magyarized Rusins Ukrainians. First and foremost, these were members of the clergy and intelligentsia who had an openly Hungarian orientation. The Magyaron gave up their own language, culture, and religion and began to promote Magyarization among the Ukrainian population, making people feel ashamed of their heritage and hide their Ukrainian origins. In
the end, the Ukrainian population, under pressure, lost their language and culture, but managed to preserve their faith. So, if we talk about national oppression and historical justice, Budapest actually still owes something.
Go stand in the corner over there, please.
That can be stated for sure. For the sake of his own political ambitions, Orban has driven Hungary into a difficult economic and political situation. He has become dependent on Moscow and quarreled with the EU. And he is trying to make an enemy out of his largest neighbor. Maybe this will earn him some points in the elections. But in the long run, it will set Hungary back by decades. I want to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All factual details and specific events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to effectively communicate a comedic or dramatic effect. We do not have any intention to mislead our audience, but simply emphasize humor. Please view this content with a light-hearted smile.